The ship was dying. Everyone knew it, though no one spoke of it anymore. Yuna stood at the observation window, her pale blue skin glowing faintly in the darkness. Outside, the stars stretched on forever, cold and silent. Somewhere among them was her home world, a place she had never seen but heard stories about since childhood, a world of warm oceans and glowing forests, a world that no longer existed for her people. The Valori had been wandering for 3 generations now. Yuna's grandmother had been born on solid ground. Yuna had known nothing but the metal walls of the Pale Dawn, the generation ship that carried the last 12,000 of her kind through the emptiness of space. She pressed her hand against the cold glass. Her fingers left a soft glow where they touched, then faded. That was the nature of her people. They carried light within them. But lately, even that light seemed dimmer. Behind her, the door opened with a tired hiss. Elder Borum entered slowly, his walking stick tapping against the floor. He was old, older than anyone else on the ship. His glow had faded to almost nothing. Just a faint shimmer beneath his wrinkled skin. "Still watching the stars?" he asked. "Still hoping," Yuna replied. Boram stood beside her. His breathing was heavy, labored. The air recyclers were failing again. Soon, they would all breathe like this. "We received another rejection today," he said quietly. "The Morvani Council has declared us unwelcome in their space. They cited Article 7 of the Dominion Treaty." Yuna closed her eyes. Article 7. The same excuse every species used. The Dominion Alliance controlled most of the galaxy, and they had declared the Valorii enemies of galactic peace. Anyone who helped them would face punishment. "What about the Silicates?" she asked. "They have no trade agreements with the Dominion. They fear what might happen if they take us in." "Fear is enough." Yuna turned away from the window. "Then, we have nowhere left to go." Borum was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his robe and pulled out a small data chip. "There is one place. Uncharted space. A system with a habitable planet. Uncharted? That means pre-contact civilizations. We cannot approach them. Galactic law forbids it. Galactic law has already condemned us to death," Borum said. His voice was tired, but firm. "We have 2 choices, Yuna. We can follow the law and die with honor. Or we can break it and give our people a chance to live." Yuna took the chip from his hand. The data showed a small yellow star with 8 planets. The 3rd planet was blue and green, covered in water and land. Primitive radio signals emanated from it. A young civilization, still taking its first steps into space. "They call themselves humans," Borum said. "We have been monitoring their transmissions for months. They are violent, divided, chaotic, but they are also curious and resourceful. They have not yet learned the rules of the galaxy. That could make them dangerous, or it could make them different." Yuna stared at the image of the blue planet. It looked peaceful from this distance, but she knew better than to trust appearances. The Kreth had seemed peaceful too, until they closed their borders and left a Valorii refugee ship to drift into a star. "The Council will never approve this," she said. "The Council is dying," Borum replied. "Half of them are too sick to attend meetings. The other half have given up hope. I am the eldest, Yuna. The decision falls to me." He placed his hand on her shoulder. His touch was cold. "I am asking you to be our voice. You have studied more languages than anyone. You have listened to human transmissions, learned their patterns. If anyone can speak to them, it is you." Yuna felt fear rising in her chest. She was young, barely past her coming-of-age ceremony. She had trained to be a translator, yes, but for established species with proper diplomatic channels, not for primitives who might shoot first and ask questions later. "What if they refuse us?" she asked. "Then we will be no worse than we are now. What if they attack us? Our shields are already failing. We cannot outrun anyone. If they choose violence, we will die. But at least we will die trying. Yuna looked back at the window. The stars seemed colder now, more distant. For her entire life, she had believed that the galaxy was vast and full of wonders, that somewhere out there, someone would help her people. But the galaxy had shown its true face. It was a place of fear and politics, where the strong crushed the weak and called it order. Maybe the primitives would be no different. Maybe they would be worse. But Borum was right. They had no other choice. How long until we reach their system? She asked. 17 days. If the engines hold. 17 days. Less than 3 weeks to prepare first contact with an unknown species. Less than 3 weeks to find the right words to explain their situation. Less than 3 weeks to convince creatures who had never seen aliens that 12,000 refugees needed their help. I will need access to all our human data, Yuna said. Every transmission, every broadcast, every piece of information we have collected. Borum nodded. You will have it, and I will need to address the people. They deserve to know where we are going, and why. I will arrange it. Yuna straightened her back and forced her glow to brighten. Just slightly. It was a sign of confidence among her people, even if she did not feel it. Then I will do my best, Elder. For all of us. Borum smiled, a rare sight on his weathered face. He turned and left the observation room, his footsteps fading into the corridor. Yuna remained at the window, staring at the distant point of light that would become their destination. Somewhere on that blue planet, billions of humans went about their lives, unaware that strangers were coming, unaware that the galaxy had already decided they were too primitive to matter, unaware that everything was about to change. Yuna whispered a prayer to the old gods, the ones her grandmother had taught her about, gods of light and water and growing things, gods who had watched over the Valori since the beginning. Let them be kind, she said softly. Please, let them be kind. The stars gave no answer. They never did. But somewhere in the darkness, the engines of the pale dawn groaned to life, and the dying ship began its final journey toward hope. Jiho had been staring at screens for 6 hours when he saw it. At first, he thought it was a glitch. The Lunar Observatory's sensors picked up strange things all the time. Space debris, solar flares, the occasional satellite malfunction. But this was different. This was big, and it was moving toward Earth. He ran the numbers 3 times. Then, he called his commander. Sujin arrived within minutes, her uniform still wrinkled from sleep. She was a small woman with sharp eyes, and a reputation for staying calm under pressure. Jiho had served under her for 2 years, and had never seen her panic. But when she looked at his data, her face went pale. That is not natural, she said. No, Commander. It is not. The object was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long. It was slowing down as it approached Earth's orbit. No asteroid did that. No comet changed course on its own. This was a ship. Within an hour, every space agency on Earth was watching. The Americans, the Chinese, the Europeans, the Indians. They all saw the same thing. Something was coming. And no one knew what it wanted. Sujin coordinated with military leaders around the world. Defense systems went on high alert. Satellites adjusted their positions. Fighter jets stood ready on runways. But everyone knew the truth. If this was an invasion, Earth had no real defense. Then the signal came. It was broadcast on every frequency, in dozens of languages. Some were human languages, rough and broken, but recognizable. Others were strange, full of sounds that no human throat could make. But the message was clear enough. We are dying. We mean no harm. Jiho listened to the recording 100 times. The voice was soft, almost musical. It sounded afraid. It could be a trick, said General Hansu, the head of Korean military operations. They could be trying to lower our defenses. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. Sujin replied. That ship is barely holding together. Look at the thermal readings. Their systems are failing. The debate raged for hours. Politicians argued. Military leaders demanded caution. Religious groups called it a sign from heaven or a punishment from hell. The internet exploded with theories and panic and wonder, but one voice cut through the noise. Dr. Yoonji Han, a professor of linguistics from Seoul National University, had been studying the alien transmission since it arrived. She was young for her position, barely 40, with a quiet intensity that made people listen when she spoke. They are refugees, she said during an emergency UN broadcast. I have analyzed their message in detail. They are asking for asylum. Their ship is damaged, their people are sick, and every other civilization has turned them away. How can you know that? Asked the American representative. Because they told us. Mixed into their broadcast are fragments of other communications, rejections from species we have never heard of. They have been wandering for a long time, and they are running out of options. The room fell silent. Unji continued. I am not saying we should trust them blindly, but I am saying we should talk to them. We should find out who they are and what they need. We owe ourselves that much, at the very least. Sujin stepped forward. I volunteer to lead a contact mission. A small team, unarmed, to approach their ship and establish communication. That is suicide, General Hansu said. Maybe. But it is also the right thing to do. The vote was close, but it passed. 3 days later, a shuttle launched from the lunar base, carrying 4 people toward the unknown. Sujin piloted the craft herself. Beside her sat Daeho, her best pilot, ready to take over if anything went wrong. In the back were Hyori, a military medic with experience in disaster zones, and Unji, clutching a tablet full of translation algorithms. As they approached the alien ship, Jiho watched from the observatory, his heart pounding. The pale dawn was enormous, a city floating in space, but it was also clearly wounded. Holes marked its hull where meteors had struck. Lights flickered randomly along its surface. It looked like a dying animal, too tired to run anymore. The shuttle docked at an airlock that barely functioned. Sujin led her team inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The air was thin and cold, filled with a strange, sweet smell. They found the Velorii in the main hall, thousands of them, huddled together for warmth. Their skin glowed faintly blue and purple, like living nightlights. Many were lying down, too weak to stand. Children clung to their parents, their large eyes reflecting the flashlight beams. Unji gasped. Hyori immediately knelt beside a fallen figure, checking for vital signs. A voice spoke from the shadows. You came. Yuna stepped forward, her glow slightly brighter than the others. She was young, Sujin realized. Younger than she had expected. But her eyes were old, filled with a weariness that came from carrying too much for too long. You came, Yuna repeated. We did not think anyone would. 2. Unji stepped forward, her translator running. We heard your message. We wanted to help. Yuna stared at her for a long moment. Then tears began to fall from her large, dark eyes, leaving glowing trails down her cheeks. No one has ever said that to us before. Sujin looked around at the suffering, at the children, at the elderly lying on the cold floor. She thought about all the arguments back home, all the fear and suspicion, and she made a decision. She activated her communication link to Earth. This is Commander Kwan. I am requesting immediate humanitarian assistance. These people need food, medicine, and shelter. They need our help. The response came back quickly, crackling with static. Commander, we need to discuss this further. There is nothing to discuss. They are dying. Are we going to watch, or are we going to do something? Silence stretched across the void of space. Yuna watched the human woman, Not understanding the words, but understanding the tone. This one was fighting for them. This stranger from a primitive world was fighting for people she had never met. Finally, the response came. Medical supplies are being prepared. We will send what we can. Sujin smiled grimly. It was not much, but it was a start. She turned to Yuna and spoke slowly, hoping the translator would catch her meaning. We are going to help you. I do not know how yet, but we will find a way. Yuna reached out and took her hand. Her touch was cool and soft, like holding moonlight. Thank you, she said. Thank you. Outside, the stars continued their endless dance, indifferent to the small drama unfolding in the wounded ship. But something had changed. For the first time in 3 generations, the Valori had found someone willing to stand beside them. The galaxy had rejected them, but the humans had offered their hand, and that made all the difference. The next 7 days were chaos. Hyeri worked without sleep, moving from patient to patient aboard the Pale Dawn. The Valori biology was strange to her. Their blood was thick and silver. Their hearts beat in a rhythm that made no sense. But sickness was sickness, and suffering looked the same in any species. She treated burns from radiation leaks. She wrapped wounds caused by falling debris. She held the hands of the dying and tried not to cry. Deho led repair teams through the damaged sections of the ship. The engines were beyond saving, but the life support could be patched together. It would not last long, maybe a month, maybe 2, but it was something. Yunji and Yuna spent every moment together, building a bridge between languages. Yuna learned human words with desperate speed. Yunji mapped the structure of Valori speech, finding patterns and meanings hidden in the musical tones. By the 3rd day, they could hold simple conversations. By the 5th day, they were almost friends. Elder Boram grew weaker by the hour. The journey had taken everything from him, but he insisted on meeting with the human leaders, speaking through Yuna's translations. We are not asking for charity, he said during a video conference with the United Nations. We are asking for a chance. A place to live, to work, to contribute. We have knowledge and skills. We have survived for 3 generations in the void. We are not helpless. The delegates listened with mixed expressions. Some showed sympathy. Others showed fear. A few showed open hostility. Your presence puts Earth at risk, said the Russian representative. You said yourself that the Dominion Alliance considers you enemies. If we take you in, we become targets. You are already targets, Boram replied. The Dominion does not care about your treaties or your neutrality. They care only about control. Today, they hunt us. Tomorrow, they will hunt you. The only question is whether you will face them alone or with allies. The debate continued for days. Countries argued among themselves and with each other. Protests filled the streets of major cities. Some demanded that the aliens be welcomed. Others demanded that they be sent away. Fear and hope battled for control of human hearts. Through it all, the Valori waited. On the 9th day, Ambassador Tewu addressed the General Assembly. He was an older man, with gray hair and a calm voice. He had spent his career negotiating peace in difficult places, but nothing had prepared him for this. I have spent the last week reading about these people, he began. Their history, their culture, their long journey through the stars, and I have spent the last week looking at our own history. Our wars, our famines, our moments of cruelty, and our moments of grace. He paused, looking around the chamber. For thousands of years, humanity has asked a single question. Are we alone in the universe? Now we have our answer. We are not alone. And our first test is not a war or an invasion. It is something much simpler and much harder. It is a group of refugees asking if they can stay. Murmurs spread through the room. I know we are afraid, Taewoo continued. I am afraid too. The galaxy is bigger and more dangerous than we imagined. There are forces out there that could crush us without effort. Taking in these refugees will put us at risk. He straightened his shoulders. But I believe that what we do in this moment will define us for generations. Will we be the species that turned away the desperate? Will we be the species that let children die because we were scared? Or will we be something better? His voice rose with passion. We have spent our entire history learning how to hate each other, learning how to build walls and draw lines, learning how to say them instead of us. Maybe this is our chance to learn something new. Maybe this is our chance to become who we were always meant to be. He looked directly into the cameras. I say we let them in. I say we build a home for the homeless. I say we show the galaxy that humanity is not just another frightened species hiding in the dark. We are something more. We are. The vote was called. Country by country. The numbers came in. It was close. Closer than anyone expected. But in the end, 127 nations voted yes. 58 voted no. 21 abstained. The refugees could stay. When the news reached the pale dawn, Yuna did not understand at first. She had to ask Unji 3 times before she believed it. Then she ran to Elder Borum's bedside and told him, her words tumbling over each other in her excitement. The old man smiled, tears streaming down his faded face. I never thought I would see this day, he whispered. I thought I would die in the dark, like my parents and their parents before them. But now, he reached up and touched Yuna's cheek. Now, there is light. The work began immediately. Engineers designed floating settlements that could be built in international waters. Medical teams prepared quarantine facilities. Schools developed programs to teach human languages. Everything moved at desperate speed. But the Valorii ship could not survive re-entry to Earth. It was too damaged, too old, too fragile. The refugees would have to be transported in human shuttles. A few hundred at a time. It would take months. Sujin coordinated the effort from the lunar base. Shuttle after shuttle launched, each carrying precious cargo. Families clutching their few belongings. Children pressing their faces to windows to see the blue planet growing larger. Elderly Valorii, who had dreamed of solid ground for their entire lives. Elder Borum was among the last to leave. He was too weak to walk, so they carried him on a stretcher. As the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, he looked out the window at the clouds and the ocean and the green land below. It is beautiful, he said softly. Yuna sat beside him, holding his hand. Yes, it is. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that our people will never forget what the humans did for us. Promise me that we will honor their kindness with kindness of our own. Yuna squeezed his hand. I promise. The shuttle landed on a calm morning in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. A floating platform had been built to receive them. Hundreds of humans waited there, ready to help. Among them was Unji, smiling and waving. Borum was the first to be carried off the shuttle. He asked to be placed on the ground, on the solid platform that rested on the water. For a long moment, he just lay there, feeling something beneath him that was not metal, not ship, not the endless void. Earth, he whispered. We are on Earth. Around him, his people stepped onto the platform one by one. Some fell to their knees and wept. Some laughed with pure joy. Some stood frozen, unable to believe that their long journey had finally ended. Yuna helped Borum sit up. Together, they watched the sun rise over the ocean. Its light was different from any star they had known. Warmer. Closer. Like a promise kept after too many years of waiting. Welcome home, Unji said, standing beside them. Yuna looked at her new friend. At this strange being from a strange world who had fought for people she did not know. Home, Yuna repeated, tasting the word. Yes, I think it is. The galaxy had rejected them. But Earth had opened its arms, and for the first time in 3 generations, The Valorii had a place to call their own. 6 months had passed since the Valorii arrived on Earth. The floating settlements had grown into small cities. 3 main platforms now existed in international waters, connected by bridges and boats. Each one housed thousands of refugees, along with the human workers who helped them adjust to their new home. Yuna lived on Platform 1, the largest settlement. She had been given a small room with a window facing east, so she could watch the sunrise every morning. After a lifetime in the darkness of space, she never tired of seeing the sun. Her days were full. She worked as a translator, helping her people communicate with doctors, teachers, and government officials. She taught classes on human customs and answered endless questions about Earth's strange ways. Why did humans eat so many different foods? Why did they spend so much time looking at small, glowing screens? Why did they argue so loudly about things that did not seem important? But slowly, painfully, the two species learned to understand each other. Yoonji visited often, bringing books and music and stories from the mainland. She taught Yuna how to read Korean and introduced her to human poetry. In return, Yuna shared Valori songs that made Unji cry, even though she did not understand the words. Daeho became a regular presence too. He had requested assignment to the settlement protection team and spent his days patrolling the waters around Platform 1. Sometimes he brought fresh fish from the ocean and taught Valori children how to cook them over open flames. The children loved him, following him around like a strange tall pet. Hyeri established a medical clinic on Platform 2. She trained Valori assistants in basic human medicine while learning their healing techniques in return. The two approaches were different, but complementary. Together, they saved lives that neither could have saved alone. But not everyone welcomed the newcomers. On the mainland, protests grew larger and louder. Groups formed with names like Humanity First and Earth for Earthlings. They carried signs and shouted slogans and demanded that the aliens be sent away. Most were simply afraid. But some were dangerous. Inspector Minjae investigated threats against the settlements. He was a quiet man, with tired eyes, who had spent 20 years solving crimes in Seoul. This assignment was different from anything he had done before. The hatred was deeper, more personal. These people did not just want the Valori gone. They wanted them destroyed. We intercepted another message today, he told Sujin during their weekly briefing. A group calling themselves the Purifiers. They are planning something big. How big? They have been buying materials, explosives, detonators, enough to destroy half a platform. Sujin's face hardened. Do we know where they are? We are close. A few more days. But they did not have a few more days. The bomb went off at dawn on a Tuesday, hidden in a supply crate that had been delivered to Platform 3. The explosion tore through a residential section, killing 47 Valori and injuring 200 more. Among the dead were 12 children. Yuna heard the news while teaching a language class. She stopped mid-sentence, her glow flickering with shock. Around her, students began to cry. Some wailed in the high keening tones of Valori grief. Others sat frozen, unable to process what had happened. The world reacted with horror. Governments condemned the attack. Vigils were held in cities across the globe. Millions of humans, who had never met a Valori, changed their profile pictures to show solidarity. But the damage was done. Fear spread through the settlements like poison. Valori, who had begun to trust their new neighbors, now looked at every human with suspicion. Children asked their parents if the bad people would come for them too. Elder Borum had died 3 months earlier, peacefully in his sleep, finally at rest. But Yuna wished desperately that he were still alive to guide them through this darkness. She found herself standing at the edge of Platform 1, staring at the ocean. The water stretched endlessly in every direction, vast and empty. For a moment, she understood why her ancestors had felt at home in space. There was something familiar about this isolation. Yuna. She turned to find Deho standing behind her. His face was grim, but his eyes were kind. I am sorry, he said simply. I am so sorry. Your people did this. Some of them. Not all. He stepped closer. Most humans are good. Most humans want to help. The ones who did this are criminals, and they will be punished. Will that bring back the dead? Deho had no answer for that. Minjae found the purifiers 2 days later. 12 people, hiding in a warehouse outside Busan. They were arrested without violence, though some of them screamed about alien invasions and the end of humanity. Their leader, a man who had lost his job when factories closed, showed no remorse. He said he was protecting Earth. He said the Valori would destroy everything if they were allowed to stay. The trial was broadcast worldwide. It lasted 3 weeks. In the end, all 12 were convicted. Some would spend the rest of their lives in prison. Others would face shorter sentences. But the verdict did not heal the wounds. Yuna watched the final judgment from her small room. When it was over, she turned off the screen and sat in silence. A knock came at her door. She opened it to find a human girl standing there, maybe 8 or 9 years old. The girl held out a piece of paper with a drawing on it. 2 figures holding hands. One human and one Valori, standing under a yellow sun. My mom said I should give this to you, the girl said shyly. She said you might be sad. Yuna took the paper. Her hands trembled. What is your name? She asked. Sumin. This is beautiful, Sumin. Thank you. The girl smiled brightly, then ran off down the corridor. Yuna closed her door and looked at the drawing. Such a simple thing. 2 figures holding hands. But it meant everything. She thought about Elder Borum's last words. About honoring kindness with kindness. About not letting fear destroy what they had built. The galaxy had rejected her people. Some humans had rejected them too. But others, like this child, like Unji and Deho and Hieri and Sujin, had opened their hearts without hesitation. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be enough. Yuna hung the drawing on her wall, right next to her window where the sun would touch it every morning. Then she went back to work. There were languages to teach, wounds to heal, and a future to build. The path was harder now, stained with blood and loss. But it still led forward, and forward was the only direction the Valori knew how to go. The ship appeared without warning. One moment the sky above Platform 1 was clear and blue. The next, a massive vessel hung in the air, blocking the sun. It was black as midnight, shaped like a blade, and covered in strange markings that glowed with angry red light. Yuna was eating breakfast when the shadow fell. She looked up through the window and felt her blood turn to ice. She knew that ship. She had seen images of it in history lessons, in nightmares, in the stories that Valori parents told their children to frighten them into obedience. It was a Dominion cruiser. Alarms screamed across the settlement. People ran in every direction, some seeking shelter, others simply running because they did not know what else to do. Human soldiers took up defensive positions, pointing weapons at a target far beyond their reach. The message came through every communication channel on Earth simultaneously. People of Earth, I am Consul Varric of the Dominion Alliance. You have harbored criminals against galactic order. You have 30 days to surrender the Valori to our custody. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated into every human language by technology that made Earth's best computers look like toys. It carried no emotion, no hesitation, just certainty. Yuna found Unji in the translation center, her face pale with fear. What do we do? Unji asked. I do not know. They had always known this moment might come. Elder Borum had warned them. But knowing and experiencing were different things. Within hours, the United Nations called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered, their faces displayed on massive screens around the assembly hall. Among them was Ambassador Tae-woo, older now, his hair whiter than before. He had spent the last year fighting for the Valori. Now, he faced his greatest challenge yet. Consul Varric addressed them through a holographic projection. He was tall and insect-like, with multiple arms and eyes that reflected light like polished stones. His voice buzzed slightly when he spoke, as if 1,000 tiny wings were beating inside his throat. "The Valori are enemies of peace," he declared. "They refuse to comply with legitimate territorial requests. They fled, rather than face justice. Any species that aids them becomes complicit in their crimes." "What crimes exactly?" Sujin demanded. She stood in full uniform, representing Earth's newly formed Planetary Defense Initiative. "Refusing to tell you where their homeworld is? Refusing to let you colonize their territory?" Varric's many eyes fixed on her. "You are Commander Quan, the one who first made contact. You should have reported the fugitives and let proper authorities handle the matter." "Proper authorities? You mean the ones who have been hunting them for 3 generations? The ones who turned every other species against them through threats and intimidation? We maintain order. Without order, there is chaos." Tae-woo stepped forward. "Consul Varric, Earth is not a member of your alliance. We signed no treaties, accepted no obligations. We are a sovereign world, and we make our own decisions about who we welcome." "Sovereignty?" Varric made a sound that might have been laughter. "You have barely left your own planet. You have no fleet. No weapons that could threaten us. No standing in the galactic community. Your sovereignty exists because we have not bothered to end it." The room fell silent. The threat was clear. "What happens if we refuse?" Tae-woo asked quietly. "Economic isolation. No galactic trade, no access to advanced technology, no protection from other threats. You will remain primitives forever, trapped on your single world until extinction finds you." "And if we still refuse?" Varric's eyes glittered. "Then we will take the Valori by force, and anyone who stands in our way will share their fate." Varric's eyes, Varric's eyes, Varric's eyes, Varric's eyes glittered. 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 The session ended without resolution. Earth had 30 days to decide. The debate tore through every level of society. Some argued that the Valori were not worth the risk. Earth had its own problems, its own future to think about. Why sacrifice everything for strangers? Others refused to bend. They pointed to the children on the platforms, the families who had found peace after generations of running. They spoke about principles and dignity and what kind of species humanity wanted to be. Yuna was asked to address the United Nations on behalf of her people. She stood before the assembled delegates, her glow dim with exhaustion, and spoke simply. "We understand if you choose to give us up. We have asked too much of you already. You saved us when no one else would. Whatever happens now, we will never forget that. We," she paused, gathering her thoughts, "but I want you to know who the Dominion truly is. They came to our world 5 generations ago, demanding our resources, our knowledge, our submission. When we refused, they destroyed our cities. When we fled, they hunted us across the stars. Every species that helped us was punished. Every friend we made was taken from us." Her voice grew stronger. "They do not want justice. They want control. Today it is us. Tomorrow it will be someone else. And eventually, it will be you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you exist and they want what you have." She looked directly into the cameras. "We will not ask you to die for us. But we will ask you this. When the Dominion comes for Earth, and they will come, do you want to face them alone? Or do you want to face them with allies who know their cruelty and have survived it?" The room was silent when she finished. 3 days later, the Security Council voted. It was unanimous. Earth would not surrender the Valori. Sujin delivered the response to Consul Varric personally. She stood straight and proud, her voice steady. The people of Earth have made their decision. We will not give up the refugees. We will not bend to your threats. If you want them, you will have to come through us. Varric stared at her for a long moment. You are making a mistake, he said finally. Maybe, but it is our mistake to make. The console's projection flickered and disappeared. That night, Una stood on the edge of Platform 1, watching the stars. The Dominion cruiser still hung in orbit, a dark reminder of what was coming. Somewhere up there, soldiers were preparing for war. Ships were being loaded. Plans were being made. Unji joined her, saying nothing. They stood together in the darkness, two beings from different worlds, facing the same uncertain future. Are you afraid? Unji asked finally. Yes, so am I. Una reached out and took her friend's hand. Then we will be afraid together. Above them, the stars continued their ancient dance. But their light seemed different now. Not cold and distant, but warm and defiant. Earth had made its choice. Now they would have to live with it. The blockade began 3 days after Earth's refusal. Dominion ships positioned themselves at strategic points around the solar system, cutting off any possible escape route. Not that Earth had anywhere to escape to. But the message was clear. Humanity was trapped. Trade offers from other species stopped immediately. The few alien merchants who had begun showing interest in Earth's resources vanished overnight. The Dominion's reach extended far, and no one wanted to anger them by dealing with the rebellious primitives. But humanity did not collapse. Instead, something remarkable happened. Scientists from rival nations began sharing research. Old enemies set aside decades of conflict to work together. The Valoria offered their knowledge freely, teaching humans about technologies that would have taken centuries to develop alone. Jiho led a team that combined human engineering with Valorii designs. Within 3 months, they had built the first defense platforms, orbital stations, armed with weapons that could actually threaten Dominion ships. They were not enough to win a war, but they were enough to make the enemy think twice. Hyeri worked with Valorii healers to develop medical breakthroughs. The bioluminescent compounds in Valorii blood could treat diseases that had plagued humanity for generations. Cancer patients showed improvement. Genetic disorders became manageable. It was not a cure for everything, but it was hope. Deho trained pilots from a dozen countries, preparing them to fly the new hybrid ships. He had never imagined commanding an international force. But necessity made strange partnerships. A Korean pilot fought alongside a Russian, an American learned from a Chinese instructor, and everyone learned from the Valorii, who had been fighting for their lives for generations. Una became more than a translator. She became a bridge between worlds. She taught humans about Valorii culture and history. She helped her people understand the confusing customs of their new neighbors. She sat in endless meetings where stubborn leaders from both species argued about strategy and resources and who was in charge. And slowly, painfully, she helped them find common ground. The settlements evolved. What had once been refugee camps became true communities. Valorii children attended schools alongside human children. Mixed families began to form as beings from different worlds fell in love. A new generation was being born that belonged to neither species and both. One evening, Una visited a garden that had been planted on Platform 1. Real soil had been brought from the mainland, and Valorii botanists were experimenting with growing earth plants. The results were strange and beautiful. Roses that glowed faintly in the dark. Vegetables that changed color as they ripened. An elderly Valorii named Hana was tending the flowers. She had been a gardener on their homeworld, back when such things existed. Her hands were wrinkled and spotted, but they moved with gentle precision among the stems and leaves. "Do you remember the old world?" Una asked. "Only stories," Hana replied. "My grandmother told me about forests that stretched forever and oceans that sang at night. I used to dream about them when I was young. Do you still dream about them?" Hana smiled and touched a rose petal. Now I dream about this. About new forests and new songs. The past is gone, child. But the future is still being written. Yuna thought about those words often in the months that followed. The Dominion's warning shot came without warning. A kinetic strike from orbit hit an uninhabited island in the Pacific. The explosion was visible from the platforms, a pillar of fire and smoke that rose into the heavens. No one died, but the message was unmistakable. Submit or be destroyed. Earth's response came not from politicians or generals, but from ordinary people. Millions volunteered for civil defense. Factories that had made consumer goods switched to producing supplies for the orbital platforms. Farmers grew extra food to stockpile. Teachers educated children about emergency procedures. Everyone did something, even if it was small. Protests still happened. Some people still blamed the Valori for bringing this danger to their world. But they were outnumbered now by those who refused to bow. Sujin watched the news feeds from her command center on the orbital platform Taeguk. Named for an ancient symbol of balance, it was humanity's largest military installation in space. 400 humans and 200 Valori served there, working side by side to defend a planet that had become home to them all. They expect us to surrender, she said to Taewoo, who had come to inspect the defenses. They think we are too primitive to fight back. Are we? Maybe. But I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Arrington. 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 Taewoo nodded slowly. That seems to be the consensus. IR. Yuna arrived on Taeguk 3 weeks before the final battle. She had been assigned as a liaison, helping coordinate between human and Valori forces. She was not a soldier, but she had learned to be useful in many ways. She found Jiho staring at sensor readings in the command room. How long do we have? She asked. Days. Maybe less. The Dominion fleet has been moving closer. 3 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying continents. Can we stop them? Jiho turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, but there was something else in them. Something that looked almost like hope. Probably not, but we are going to try anyway. Yuna remembered the first time she had sent a message into the void, begging anyone to listen. She remembered the fear, the certainty that no one would answer. And she remembered the humans who came anyway. I never thanked you, she said quietly, for coming to our ship that day, for believing we were worth saving. Jiho smiled slightly. You do not need to thank us. You would have done the same for us. You do not know that. Yes, I do. Because you are doing it now. Standing here, fighting beside us, when you could have run. That is all the proof I need. That night, Yuna walked through the corridors of Taeguk. Humans and Valori passed her, busy with preparations. Some nodded in greeting. Others were too focused to notice. But there was no division anymore, no us and them. Just beings facing the same storm together. She stopped at an observation window and looked down at Earth. The blue planet hung in the darkness, fragile and beautiful. 12 billion people lived there. 12,000 Valori had joined them. Together, they were building something new. The Dominion wanted to crush it. They wanted to prove that kindness was weakness and that power was everything. Yuna pressed her hand against the glass. Her palm glowed softly, leaving a mark of light that slowly faded. They were going to fight. All of them. Together. And even if they lost, even if the Dominion destroyed everything, they would leave a mark that could not be erased. The universe would remember what happened here. It would remember that when darkness came, humanity did not run. They stood. The Dominion fleet arrived at dawn. 3 dreadnoughts emerged from faster-than-light travel, each one larger than a city. Their black hulls absorbed the light of the sun, creating shadows that fell across the face of the Earth. Behind them came dozens of smaller vessels, cruisers and fighters and support ships, more firepower than humanity had ever imagined. Sujin watched them approach from the command deck of Taeguk. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. Beside her stood Jiho, Deho, and 100 others, human and Valorii together. All stations report ready, Jiho said quietly. Defense platforms are charged, Deho added. Pilots are standing by. Sujin nodded. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for it as best she could. But preparation and reality were different things. Consul Varric's voice crackled through the communication system. Earth forces, you have one final chance. Surrender the Valorii, and we will spare your world. Refuse, and we will make an example of you that the galaxy will never forget. Sujin activated her response channel. This is Commander Quan of the Planetary Defense Initiative. The Valorii are our people now. If you want them, come and take them. The line went silent. Then the Dominion fleet opened fire. The first barrage hit Platform 3, the same settlement that had been bombed by human extremists months ago. Shields held for 7 seconds before collapsing. The explosion was visible from space, a brief flash of light where thousands had lived. Teguk returned fire. Energy beams lanced through the void, striking Dominion ships. One cruiser exploded, another veered off course with damage, but the dreadnoughts pushed forward, their massive weapons charging for another strike. Human fighters launched in waves, mixed squadrons piloted by the best of both species. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they flew with desperate courage. Deho led the 3rd Squadron, diving through enemy formations, hitting targets wherever he could. "Watch your left, Mina," he shouted through the radio. "I see them," came the reply, followed by the sound of weapons firing. The battle raged for hours. Defense platforms fell one by one. Ships on both sides were destroyed. The space around Earth became a graveyard of metal and flame. On Teguk, Yuna worked in the medical bay, helping Hieri treat wounded soldiers. Blood of 2 colors stained her hands, silver and red. She did not have time to feel afraid. There was only the next patient, the next wound, the next life to save. The station shook as a missile struck their shields. Warning lights flashed. Damage reports flooded in. "We cannot hold much longer," Jiho reported. "Their main guns are targeting us directly." Sujin looked at the tactical display. Half their fleet was gone. The remaining platforms were failing. Earth lay exposed, defenseless, against the approaching dreadnoughts. She had failed. They had all failed. And then the sensors detected something new. Ships, dozens of them, emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They were old and battered. Their designs, unfamiliar, but they were armed, and they were heading toward the battle. "Who are they?" Sujin demanded. The communication system crackled with a new voice. "Earth forces. This is Captain Borean, of the Morvani Resistance. We heard what you did. For the Valorii. We are here to return the favor." Another voice joined in, rough and mechanical. "This is Silicate Ship 17. We stand with the humans." More voices followed. The Kreth refugees, the outcasts of the Turvan system, exiles from worlds across the galaxy, species that had been beaten down and turned away, gathering in the darkness where no one was watching. They had been watching Earth. They had seen humanity's choice, and they had come. The refugee fleet was not large enough to defeat the Dominion, but they did not need to defeat them. They only needed to make the battle costly. Consul Varric watched as his perfect victory became complicated. More enemy ships meant more losses. More explanations to give to his superiors. More questions about whether this primitive world was worth the trouble. Sujin opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. "Consul Varric, your forces are taking significant damage. Reinforcements from multiple species have arrived to support us. You can continue this attack and eventually win. But your losses will be severe. Your reputation will suffer. Other worlds will see that the mighty Dominion can be hurt." She paused. letting the words sink in. Or, you can leave. Tell your masters that Earth was not worth the cost. Tell them the primitives were more trouble than expected. We will not pursue you. We will not seek revenge. We will simply continue to exist, here in our corner of the galaxy, bothering no one. Silence stretched across the void. Varek's response came slowly, each word dripping with contempt. You think this is victory? You have made enemies that will last forever. The Dominion does not forget. Neither do we. The Dominion fleet began to withdraw. Slowly at first, then faster. Within an hour, they had vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind wreckage and silence. Sujin sat down heavily in her command chair. Around her, crew members stared at their screens in disbelief. On Earth, people emerged from shelters and looked up at the sky. The dark shadows were gone. The sun shone clear and bright. Yuna stood at the medical bay window, watching the stars. Hayeri came to stand beside her. We did it, Hayeri said softly. We actually did it. For now, Yuna replied. They will come back. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But they will come back. Then we will be ready. Yuna turned to look at her friend. This human woman, who had healed Valori children, who had worked without rest, who had never asked for anything in return. Why did you do it? Yuna asked. Why did your people fight for us? You could have given us up. It would have been easier. Hayeri thought about the question for a long moment. My grandmother used to tell me a story, she said finally. About a time when her country was at war. Everything was destroyed. Everyone was hungry, and a stranger from another land came and shared his food with her family, even though he had almost nothing himself. She smiled softly. She said that kindness does not make sense. It does not follow logic. You cannot explain why some people help strangers when it costs them everything. But those are the people who change the world. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. Elder Boram said something similar, once. He said that light only matters in the darkness. That hope only means something when everything seems lost. She looked out at the stars again. Maybe that is what your people are. A light in the darkness. A hope that should not exist, but does. Anyway, 3 years later, Earth was transformed. The floating settlements had become permanent cities. Valorii and human children played together on beaches and in parks. New technologies changed daily life in ways both big and small. A new galactic council had formed, made up of exiled species and independent worlds. Earth was its home. Humanity, once isolated primitives, had become something else entirely. Yuna served as the first ambassador to the council. She stood before representatives of a dozen species, her glow bright and steady. We are not the strongest, she said. We are not the oldest or the wisest. But we know something that the Dominion will never understand. We know that kindness is not weakness. We know that hope is not foolish. We know that when you stand together, you can face any darkness. She thought of Elder Boram, who had died believing in a future he would never see. She thought of Unji and Deho, and Hayeri, and Sujin, and all the others who had fought and sacrificed and refused to give up. The galaxy rejected us, she continued. It told us we were worthless, that we had no place among the stars. But the humans offered us their hand. They said we were worth saving. They said everyone is worth saving. Her voice rose with emotion. That is the light they carry. That is the message we will spread across every world. To every species that has ever been told they do not matter. You matter. We matter. And together, we are stronger than any force that would try to break us. Outside the council chambers, a child played in a garden. She was 5 years old, with dark hair like her human father, and skin that glowed softly like her Valorii mother. She chased butterflies through flowers that had never existed before. Hybrid plants, created by two worlds working together. She did not know about the wars that had been fought. She did not understand the politics, or the history, or the sacrifices. She only knew that the sun was warm, the flowers were pretty, and her parents loved her. Her name was Hannah, after a gardener who had planted roses on a floating platform and dreamed of new forests. The galaxy was still dangerous. The Dominion still lurked in the shadows. The future was still uncertain. But on Earth, in the light of a yellow sun, hope was blooming, and it would never be extinguished again.